Imagine this, in front of you, an arena with 10,000 people, spotlights blazing, cameras rolling, millions watching on their screens. A historic moment. People are waiting for a speech that will later be carved into stone. You have a chance to say something that will be quoted 20 years from now. Franklin Roosevelt entered history as the president who led the country through the Great Depression and the Second World War, alongside the USSR and the United Kingdom. Reagan, as the man who jump-started the economy, cut taxes, and delivered lines that sliced through the air. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and you walk out and say, I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community. And in that moment, the entire country collectively blinks. If you remove the image and leave only the audio, you might think it's an after-school club where kids are discussing the importance of friendship, or a teenager who read 2 self-help books and is trying to sound smart on a podcast. But no, it's you, the vice president and a candidate for president of the United States. And that's when it becomes genuinely uncomfortable. You continue with that signature expression, serious, thoughtful, a slight tilt of the head, as if you're Socrates in ancient Greece, tugging at a gray beard and about to reveal the secrets of existence to your students. And you say, the significance of the passage of time. There is great significance to the passage of time. You repeat it with such gravity, as if you've just unveiled a new Einstein formula. Time has significance. Significance has time, especially the significance of time. And at some point, viewers start straining their brains, trying to figure out, where's the actual thought? Maybe it's hidden deep down? Maybe this is political zen? Or maybe we're just too stupid to grasp the depth and horizon of an American politician's mind. But no, it's simply a loop around your own sentence. Awkward is when someone asks you, are you going to the border? And you respond, I'm in Guatemala today. We've been to the border. We've been to the border. But you haven't been to the border. And I haven't been to Europe. I don't understand what you're getting at. At that moment, the journalist freezes. The room freezes. The country freezes. This isn't a hostile interrogation. It's an ordinary question, but the answer drifts off into a parallel universe. Then you speak to members of the military, people in uniform, people for whom specifics are oxygen. They're waiting for a plan, a strategy, direction. And you say, space is exciting. It spurs our imaginations and forces us to ask big questions. Space affects us all and it connects us all. Somewhere in the audience, an officer is thinking, we were hoping to hear about the budget and threats, but you continue with cosmic philosophy, nodding as if you've just delivered an aphorism that will be quoted in academies. And of course, the moon. You decide to talk to children, perhaps to share your knowledge about science and technology, maybe to mention great Americans, though you would hardly be able to name even one founding father or talk about the valorous landing in Normandy on Omaha Beach. Normandy to you sounds more like the name of a liqueur or a cocktail at the old Ebbett Grill. And instead of that enormous range of topics, you choose to say, you guys are going to see, you're going to literally see the craters on the moon with your own eyes. I'm telling you, it is going to be unbelievable. But the most interesting part comes next. Your remarkable story resurfaces. The early 90s. Remember? Your eyes meet. You smile playfully, lightly twirling your hair. He approaches immediately. Confident, a man who doesn't need introductions. Conversation. Dinner, another meeting, a romance begins, and suddenly your career starts moving upward at a speed that surprises everyone, except you. What a coincidence. Your beloved turns out to be Willie Brown, the most powerful Democrat in California in the 90s, Speaker of the State Assembly, a man in San Francisco known as the godfather of politics. Of course, you didn't know that. It just happened. You're 29. Maybe 30. He's around 60. A 30-year gap. Why be embarrassed? He's formally married, though long separated. That doesn't bother you either. And then your career takes off like a space shuttle. In 1994, you receive an appointment to the California Medical Assistance Commission. Salary, over $70,000 a year in the 90s, adjusted to today's dollars, around $120,000. The commission meets twice a month, 2 meetings, and an annual income many prosecutors could only dream of. You remain on the board until 1998, nearly 4 years. Then another appointment to a different state board. Altogether, about $400,000 in 90s money, which today approaches $800,000. Not a bad start, is it? Plus status, plus the keys to a brand new BMW, plus appearing arm in arm with the most influential politician in the state at receptions attended by California's wealthiest donors. Doors that others had to pound on for years open for you with a single touch. Inside the party, irritation grows. These posts are usually reserved for the most valuable party players, those who helped keep Brown in power, but one of them goes to you, and everyone knows why. You didn't have to struggle, endure pain, or build authority. Just bat your eyes at the right moment and wear a more interesting dress. Then, a turn. Brown runs for mayor of San Francisco and wins. You're at the victory party. Cameras capture the smiles, but by the time of the inauguration, His wife returns. She holds the Bible while he takes the oath. You're already on the sidelines. The romance ends. The connections, however, do not disappear. When you decide to run for District Attorney of San Francisco, a network of contacts is working behind the scenes. Donors Brown had known for decades received signals. He later said himself that he helped you in that campaign. That's politics. Relationships end, obligations remain. And then, another plot twist. Before the election, you give a major interview and effectively throw him under the bus. Something you will do more than once with your patrons. You say his era is over. Now it's your time. Sound familiar? The script is well known. Climb the ladder, then pull it up behind you. Grandpa Joe sends his regards. But as you like to say, I can imagine what can be and can be unburdened by what has been. You know, the year 2003. You win the race for district attorney. Then 2010. A campaign for Attorney General of California against Republican Steve Cooley. In the end, victory by a razor-thin margin. Not a landslide. Not a double-digit triumph. A fight right at the edge. You move on to the United States Senate, then become vice president. And that's when things get really interesting. Over the years, you've become a shark in the machinery of power. You know who owes whom, who's sleeping with whom, who hates whom, and who will ultimately vote the right way. You can sit in a room where the air is heavier than money and walk out with backing secured. You've learned how to survive, maneuver, and distance yourself at exactly the right moment. But with the public, it's as if there's a systemic glitch. The camera turns on, and the strange magic begins. You're put in charge of handling the migration crisis. Millions of border crossings, record numbers. The country waits. Now the vice president will step out and explain what to do. Instead, you travel to Central America and talk about root causes. People ask, are you going to the border itself? And that's when the circus starts. The answer drifts into philosophy, into geography. The question was simple. The response sounds like you decided it was a Harvard diplomacy exam. Then North Korea, a slip of the tongue. You mix up allies, south, north. What's the difference? It's one peninsula, right? Except one side has nuclear weapons and sanctions, and the other is an official U.S. ally. Yes, it was a mistake, but in your position, a mistake isn't just oops, it's an international screenshot. Then Ukraine. You're asked about the conflict. The world is boiling. Alliances, sanctions, deliveries, strategy. And you explain it roughly like this. A big country invaded a small country. It sounds like a recap for students who slept through class. Formally correct. Depth, zero. People watch and wonder, is this a White House briefing or a morning circle called The World Around Us? And then, the favorite part, the laugh. Your trademark. Nervous, slightly hysterical laugh. It appears at the perfect, meaning, the worst possible moment. A serious question. About inflation. About the border. About a conflict overseas. Pause. Camera on you. And instead of a crisp answer, that laugh. The kind that sounds like someone isn't feeling very well. Sometimes it feels like a doctor's appointment. Or just a device to fill the silence. Buy time. Because there's nothing to say. And silence is scarier. So you laugh. A journalist asks a direct question. You smile. A laugh. Then another. And then the verbal acrobatics begin. The laugh becomes an airbag. Maybe someone advised you to use it to avoid awkwardness. When the thought doesn't come, haha does. And the viewer at home wonders, is this a nervous breakdown or a strategy? And here's the funniest part. With all this baggage, you decide you can once again deploy your favorite line. I can imagine what can be and can be unburdened by what has been, you know? And ease Grandpa Joe, your boss, out of the race and step into his place. When Joe walked onto that debate stage and began stumbling, losing his train of thought, freezing with a blank stare, you didn't watch in horror. You watched with cold understanding. The moment had arrived. The failure was too obvious. Donors grew nervous. Party bosses started whispering. The ratings trembled. The country saw not an image, but weakness. And in that moment, you carefully stepped forward with the phrase you love to repeat. Just like back in California, I can imagine what can be and can be unburdened by what has been. You were his right hand. You were part of that administration. You carried responsibility alongside him. But in that formula, you suddenly stand apart, looking ahead, unburdened by anything. Biden is the weight. You are the fresh air. And the irony is that you deliver it with that same serious expression. Slight tilt of the head, as if passing down ancient wisdom. But in essence, it sounds like, thank you, Grandpa. Now it's me. Then, the debates. A big stage. Lights, millions of viewers, tension thick in the air. Across from you, a man who lives in conflict as if it's his natural habitat. He attacks, interrupts, presses. You try to hold the prosecutor's posture. Sharp gaze, measured pauses, rehearsed formulas. But once the real exchange of blows begins, it becomes clear. This isn't an intra-party scuffle in California. This is a national ring. Backroom discipline doesn't work here. Instinct does. Speed does. The ability to strike back immediately, not 3 paragraphs later. And at some point you retreat again into abstractions, into formulas, into the right words. He speaks briefly, sharply, primitively, but clearly, and a viewer tired of constructions chooses simplicity. Then the numbers. Polls swing. The party tries to keep a straight face. Commentators say, she'll regroup. But in the air, you can already feel the moment slipping away. The campaign turns defensive. You react more than you attack. You explain more than you set the agenda. And every time a clean, dry answer is needed, there's either a complicated formulation, or that familiar nervous chuckle, or a pivot to a vague future without specifics. Election night arrives. The map gradually turns red. Commentators cautiously begin to say, it appears Trump is winning. Pauses at headquarters, tense faces, cameras searching for reactions. And you understand, this is it. The hardest part isn't losing. The hardest part is admitting you lost. You step out and choose your words. No more grand phrases. No more unburdened by what has been. The voice is steady but heavy. You speak about democracy, about the peaceful transfer of power, about continuing the fight. You try to rise above defeat, but the fact remains, you lost. And here begins a new act. You move to Los Angeles, away from the constant spotlight of Washington. A little quiet. A little distance, and of course, a book, memoirs, 107 days, the story of the campaign, behind the scenes, personal emotions, a difficult road, inner doubts, all carefully packaged and sent to market. Because in modern politics, defeat is also an asset. It can be monetized, turned into lecture tours, podcasts, contracts. You tell your version of events again, explain what went wrong. Hint at circumstances, at the atmosphere, at the difficult context, and once again, carefully distance yourself from what's inconvenient. The loss isn't weakness, it's a stage, part of the journey, almost a heroic trial, and that is the logic of your career. A romance, and a step forward, distance, and a new phase, a setback, and new packaging. You have always known how to survive, how to adapt, how to turn a situation into the next opportunity. But there's one thing harder to reshape, the image. For some, you remain the hard-edged insider who always senses the moment. For others, the person who never quite learned to speak plainly and clearly when it mattered most. For some, an ambitious figure unafraid to step onto the national stage. For others, a candidate unprepared for its scale. And now, in Los Angeles, book in hand, you look forward again, perhaps once more, imagining what can be. Because if there is one thing you truly mastered, it's this, not disappearing, even after defeat.